Hello, Talk Funders. Today, we're joined by Houston from Cycle Phones. Hello, Houston, my friend.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, Houston. Houston, I'm just going to jump straight in to the to your video, which is really interesting. I'm really interested in this whole idea of ESG, environmental, social, and governance investing, and this really does tick a lot of the boxes on this. And it really feeds into the talk funding ethos of global sustainable peace now. So with that sort of intro, could we really start talking about cycle phones?
Yeah, for sure. So personally, my name is Houston. I'm the CEO of Cycle, COO of Cycle, sorry. We're tackling the problem of e-waste. And we're starting with the most common form of e-waste, which is smartphones. And smartphones actually get replaced every 3 years for three main reasons. So the first reason is battery degradation. The battery just doesn't hold charge anymore. The second one is physical damage, right? Your screen is cracked, or the back of your phone is cracked. You want to replace it. And thirdly, it gets really, really slow over time. I'm sure you've experienced this problem, just as probably millions of other people have as well. Now, the first two are already solvable, but to solve the problem of throwing out your phone every 3 years, you really need to fix all three of those. And we've started with an app that basically makes your phone faster than new phones. And what we do is we stream an Android emulator from an AWS server directly to your phone. And in initial testing, our app prototype, actually, we've made an 8-year-old Samsung S5 faster than my iPhone X right here. And currently, we're raising on WeFunder, and we're halfway to our $120,000 goal.
Wow, superb, superb. So so it says here on the world's first phone that gets cheaper and more powerful the longer you own it. So at the moment, Cycle Phones is really focused on the app side of the development, but in the future you will be going on to develop your own phone, probably with a replaceable battery. Is that correct?
Yes, that's the goal.
Great. Okay. And these highlights really cover a lot of the what you've just spoken about. I mean, it's a massive market. The 1 trillion market is ripe for technology disruption. That is amazing. So is it the mobile phone market itself is 1 trillion?
Yes, that's the mobile phone market itself.
My goodness. First mover advantage. So what does first mover advantage mean for your company?
Well, first mover advantage, for us, it means that we're the first people to start exploring this kind of computing architecture, specifically for the consumer use case of smartphones. There's other companies that have been doing it for, various other applications. Like right now, I think the most common one is probably, like Azure or Amazon Cloud, or, one of the big companies providing service. That's more for like developers rather than consumers. On the consumer side, you have also Google Stadia, which is a really good service. There's probably a couple others out there. The Shadow PC for streaming a Windows VM to your desktop, and they all these services kind of do more or less the same thing, which is give you that kind of unlimited computing power from the cloud, while keeping your overall lifetime cost of hardware down.
Okay, great. And so you're going on to the third one, is your strong environmental mission. By the sounds of it,
Yes.
You want people to, in time buy your own phone, but at the moment, basically reuse and by enhancing people's existing phone rather than, as you say, buying a new one every 2 to 3 years. Yeah,
phones, man. Like most of the time when I replace my phone, it's still usable. It's just slow, or the battery degrades. It doesn't need to be thrown out. And what we're really focused on is the utilization of your phone. So I think when we did our initial research, talking to a lot of users, we found that your phone only gets used like 12%, 12.5% of the entire day. So if your phone's like, if your phone costs $1,000, you're really only getting like, $125 out of it, right? Which is that's not a lot of value, and the rest of the time it's just sitting there. There's a lot of processing power in that phone. So we thought, well, one way to really reduce or increase rather the efficiency of the utilization rate of these powerful devices is to centralize the computing power, kind of like the original computing architecture with mainframes. An analogy that we like to use is, it's kind of like back in the day when you like really, really back in the day where if you had like a factory, right, you had to supply your own power, and eventually that got moved into a centralized system, which we know as kind of like the power grid. But we haven't done that with computers yet. But it makes sense with power, and it also makes sense with computers, especially right nowadays where everything's just super connected. We have 5G, latency isn't as big of a deal as it is before. And the advent of these new infrastructure technologies is what I believe makes timing of our company so good.
Fantastic. Great. I'm really excited. I'm so happy to be interviewing at this stage of your company's development. Yeah. So hopefully it will come back in maybe in 12 months time for your next big WeFunder. So software demos are outperforming modern phones. You've really basically spoken about that already. And then more efficient and more economical. What does this mean? The 5x project utilization rate cycle. What does that mean?
So with Cycle, we want to increase the utilization of I guess computing hardware by at least 5x. So we want, instead of 12.5% of the time, we want it to be what would 5x of that be? At least 60%, 62.5% at least. And we actually think we can get a lot higher than that because if we have a server and that's being used, let's say being shared by 100 users, 100 people with phones, right? When you're not using your phone, that computing power is allocated to someone else. So that's what we mean by increasing the utilization rate by 5x.
And then that feeds into really your sixth highlight, which is the all-in-one solution, which gives users the ability to turn their phone into a desktop computer, which I find so exciting.
Yeah, no, that one. I'm really, really excited for that one because, man, I have way too much electronic devices. I have, man, let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I'm pretty sure I have another phone upstairs, 7. I have like probably close to like 10 electronic devices, each one of them with a super powerful processor, and most of them right now, other than the exception of this laptop, which you're interviewing me on right now, is not being used. And it's just money sitting there. It's resources that aren't being utilized efficiently. And what we really want to do is we believe in more with less. We want to really increase the efficiency of it because that's how things become scalable, right? If you look at just general world population statistics and smartphone usage, I think it's around 3 billion people in the world that have smartphones, and there's 5 billion people in the world that don't have access to that. So what happens when those 5 billion people, when their living conditions improve, when their income improves, they all want smartphones? Well, it's just not going to be sustainable, and it's going to be really, really, abhorrent to the environment because, man, like even with recycling, we did research on recycling, and what we found is that when your phone gets recycled, they actually get shipped off to developing or third world nations, and they don't have labor laws there, right? They don't have child protection laws there. Most of the time it's these little kids that are dissecting your phones and they're working with really toxic chemicals, and the working environments aren't ideal, probably not even close to being ideal, and they're getting their brain development's being impacted, and it's really kind of the third world. Those are the people that are really being affected, and unfortunately it's the children in those regions that are being affected.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Houston. I have to be honest, I'm totally unaware of the darker side of the mobile phone industry, particularly at the end of use. I must look into that more myself. Maybe you can share me a few links. I was totally unaware of what you were saying there. So let's move on now to welcome to a new era of mobile computing. And as you were alluding to a moment ago, there is a problem clearly with mobile computing, not only just with the hardware, but actually the end of use case. So, and you guys at Cycle Phones are being part of the solution. So thank you very much for being part of the solution. So maybe, would you like to say anything more about the problem of it, or have you covered that already? Or
well, I think we believe our belief is that you really only need one computing device. I mean, phones are getting so powerful these days, right? The new iPhone, 12 or 13, it costs as much as my laptop, and it probably runs faster than that now too. So I think it's getting to the point where you don't really need a laptop. We believe that your experience with computing, it should be more dependent on your peripherals, like your screen, your mouse, monitor, or your keyboard rather, versus what kind of device it is, what type of device it is. And with the computing infrastructure that we're developing, what's really exciting about it is that you're never going to be bottlenecked by hardware. So with your phone, you can turn it into a desktop, you can turn it into a laptop, you can use it as a phone. It never slows down. You can, with the proper licensing obtained, we could stream Windows, we could stream whatever OS. So your phone can really, it's just kind of like a portal to all your computing needs, and you only need one. And if you think phones are bad, wait till you see how much crap is in your desktop PC. I have a full-size tower, and if I have to replace a part, throwing out a motherboard, that's a lot of valuable components just being wasted. And like we said before, recycling is not the most effective solution.
And that's where like the problem is, this idea of e-waste and planned obsolescence is really good. Is this tying into this? I mean, I follow your guy in New York, the right to repair guy. What's his name? Oh, is this all feeding into that as well? The idea of just prolonging your device's life.
Absolutely. I mean, right to repair isn't completely relevant to us yet, since we're not doing our own hardware. But in the future, we want these, man, we want to just create a cost-effective solution for hardware. And if people want to repair their own phones, absolutely go for it. I think the problem with the current kind of setup for these massive electronic companies such as Samsung and Apple is that their business model, there's an inherent conflict of interest with their business model and what the consumer really wants. So the consumer just, they just, like, phones aren't really getting that much better with each generation, right? If you look at the new iPhone 13, Apple, please don't sue me for this, but it's not that much of a jump from an iPhone 12, right? Visually speaking, it's barely a jump at all. But what do they upgrade on? It's better cameras, slightly better processor, right? It's not really that much different. So even with better cameras and better screen resolutions, like, the human eye is not improving at the rate of technology. When you go from 60 to 120 FPS, it's a big difference. But going from 120 FPS to 240 FPS, it's not as big anymore. And so I think just this massive arms race of features and slight improvements in benefits between all these big companies, it's really drawing their focus away from what's really important, which is we should be trying to be more efficient with our resources.
Fantastic. Well, bringing it back to you're focusing on your excellent WeFunder page and your guys' solution. The next section that's the part of your solution is let's the cloud do the work. Can you say a little about that, please?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, there's a couple problems with there's a couple physical limitations to your smartphone. Right? If you look at your smartphone, it's small. It doesn't have it doesn't have the type of cooling that you would need to run high performance applications. And so what we want to do is we want to shift that away from your phone and to do it on actual machines that are designed for high compute applications. And the cloud is just a server. It's just and the server is basically just a computer on steroids, right? Our servers have like 700 something gigabytes of RAM. There's I forget how many virtual CPUs it technically has, but it's a lot. It's more computation than you'll ever need. And that's what we mean by shifting everything to the cloud is you're no longer restricted by the portable, physical limitations of a smartphone.
And then in terms of the hardware, say, with your phone, then you'd be able to, like, if Alan drops his phone, which we're all prone to do, the screen cracks. So it's probably a modular based type of phone model where it's easy to replace the screen, or your battery dies, you get a new battery, that sort of way. And is that right? And then that's why you're able to, as your diagram says, the lifespan of your cycle phone goes to 5 to 10 years from the average phone of 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, because, well, first your battery dies or you drop it, and then your phone gets slow. So either way, even if you like right now with your current, what do you have, a Note 9?
A Note 9.
Right. So even with your Note 9, like even if you replace the screen and the battery, it's still, at the end of the day, if it's a slow phone, you're not going to want to use it. You're going to want to replace your phone. And we really want to, like we talked to a bunch of people, and they said they're going to replace their phone anyways, and that's why a lot of people don't bother replacing the battery. They don't bother with the repair, because you pay what, like $100, $200 to replace all these components, and your phone slow down anyway. So you might as well just buy a new phone, especially nowadays, with these phone plans. I think it's just $30 a month to replace your phone.
Yep. And this section here about see our technology in action, I would really encourage the talk funders and the WeFunders to come along and have a look at it, because it really does explain very well a lot of your technology. And as it says here, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. We were super hyped to see it in action, and yeah, it blew me away, to be honest, because like you understand how it works in theory, but to see it in person is really spectacular. I mean, we've been able to turn, I think in the video that's a Samsung Galaxy S10 versus an $80. It's just kind of like this phone we bought from Alibaba just randomly. So it's not the best phone. Like the screen is, it's pretty. Yeah,
it's a great video. I watched it earlier, so I recommend everybody to come along and look at these. It's really proof of concept. Here it is. I think it's great that you put it on the WeFunder page to sort of say, here is the cycle phones in action. And this one here was a Samsung S5. I think I might even have had the S5 at some point, and the iPhone X on the right hand side. So great.
Yeah, what we really wanted to show is that it doesn't matter what your phone hardware is. Your phone can be faster than these new phones that are coming out.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely.
What does it mean?
Sorry, go on.
What does it mean by utilization rates? What's all that about?
Utilization rate is basically like how often or what percentage of the total hours in the day that you're actually using, your phone's computational components, the SoC, how often is that being used throughout the day? And that's what most of the time it's just sitting in your pocket idle.
Oh yeah, that goes back to what you were saying earlier in the interview, is like we're only using our phone 12% of the day.
Yes.
And it's like so instead of it like I mean, in one sense, that's like the Tesla model, isn't it? Where you buy this really expensive car, and like I'm sitting at home here in Belfast, and you're in time, whether it's, I don't know how long it's going to be, 10 years time, whether I'll ever be able to afford a Tesla or not, your Tesla can be sent off to work. It could be doing other, it could be
exactly.
It could be ride sharing or whatever.
Yes. Mm-hmm. That's a good analogy, actually.
Right. Wow. And then taking this technology a step further. Fantastic. Let's just look at the market potential, which I find really think the numbers are mind blowing. Really,
yes.
Just gonna have to say, can we talk through that, please?
Yeah. So, smartphones, there's a lot of smartphones being sold every year. I think the numbers we found were from 2019, but I think it's probably a lot more than 1.37 billion smartphones. Like that's a lot of smartphones. And the ugly side to all these massive numbers, these spectacular sales, is that those phones are going to end up in the trash. All of those phones are going to end up in the trash in probably the next couple of years. And 1.4 billion smartphones is a lot of phones. All of those are going to end up in the garbage or some recycling plant, and it shouldn't be that way. It really shouldn't. We've been kind of conditioned to have this disposable attitude to our electronics. When it breaks, get a new one, and how often they break pretty often. Well, and sometimes even if it doesn't break, if the user experience is bad, you get a new one, and that's what we've been conditioned to do because of the computing architecture that has been so prevalent which is, decentralized computing, which is every device has its own processing power. And the infrastructure wasn't there back in the day, but it's here now, and we need to change. We need to adopt to a more sustainable model of computing.
And then that finishes off the excellent WeFunder page. Is like idea of changing the cycle. And that's what the Adam really is talking about there in the Q&A video as well. It's the idea of changing that, breaking up that cycle.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
That's exactly
just
what I think needs to happen.
Yeah, great. And your whole team, actually, just moving on from Adam McDonald, the CEO. I think that's the whole ethos behind the whole team.
Yes,
it's great to see all you young people are really involved and being really part of the solution to this e-waste, etc. You're fantastic.
Thank you.
And so, just moving on to the actual WeFunder pledges that you have. Just going up to the top of the page. Like there's the minimum investment is $100, but the one that caught my eye is there's one coming in maybe for those who have profitably sold their Bitcoin and who are sitting on cash to do the $1,000 plus one, which I think is great. It's an invitation to our private testing group, which I would find interesting, where you'll be able to be the first in the newest updates and features, etc., etc. And do you have a big community behind you at the moment, Houston?
Well, we've done some reaching out online. It's not, I wouldn't call it big, but we've got 600 signups for our early prototype that we can launch to, and these are people just in the Bay Area. That's probably where the first servers are going to be. So we've secured kind of like an early test group of users, but the community is something that we're focused on day one, and we definitely most importantly for us, we building a group of people that are really passionate about the problem that we're solving. It is first and foremost, I think that something like that, it can't really be rushed. I think it takes time, it takes dedication, it takes a lot of outreach and just getting online and talking about it and making people just aware of the problem that we're solving in general.
Because it really is that idea of like, one, you're coming up against very powerful companies, as you mentioned earlier in the interview. We don't have to mention them now, but also it's also like the idea of the super oil tanker, which is going in one direction, and what you're trying to do is get humanity, particularly I suppose in the Western and increasingly in the Asia, etc., who are smartphone mad. I mean, part of my extended family are smartphone mad.
Yes.
It's like every 6 months they've got a new phone. Is like to really begin to steer humanity away from this sort of instant. I'm going to get a new phone. It's a big. So thank you so much, Houston, for being, and Cyclephones for being part of the solution.
No problem. No problem at all.
Houston, I think we'll go on. We'll finish this main interview here, and we'll go on to do we're going to do a case study interview on my Note 9 and look at how the Cyclephones can be extended. So thank you very much, Houston, from Cyclephones, who are live on WeFunder. All the links will be in the video solution below. Thank you so much, Houston. Bye now.
No problem at all.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.